Hafaday and good evening, everybody. I'm Jason Salas on behalf of KUAM, and welcome to our 2024 primary election Congressional Candidate Forum, coming to you from the lovely Encore Theater here at the Crown Plaza Resort. My colleague Nick Delgado will join us momentarily, but may I ask at this time that kindly we all rise and remove our headgear as we honor our country and our island with the singing of our national anthem and the Guam hymn. Ladies and gentlemen, and now to honor our culture as Chamorros and our heritage, presenting the traditional Saina blessing, our students from the Chief Hurao Academy, providing the first Chamorro immersion programs on Guam after almost 20 years of implementing programs. They will be going into the Magalahi Hurao Chamorro Academy Charter School, which will be opening this coming school year, 2024 and 2025. Ladies and gentlemen, a traditional Saina from the students of Chief Hurao Academy. Ladies and gentlemen, kindly take your seats.
situation on Guam and the state of the economy.
What would you do to make us feel safer?
There was striving to even cut hours for our employees, to try to make a living.
What are your plans to fix the infrastructure with the island?
Do something about the schools, the hospital.
Help us, something more decent and safe place to stay.
I don't know what's going on. When is it going to be cleaned up? And there's kids around here that plays.
What would you do to better our healthcare system on Guam?
The frustration felt by so many who call Guam home, and they want to see change. Good evening, and welcome to your 2024 Primary Congressional Candidate Forum. I'm Nick Delgado. We are bringing this forum to you live from inside the Encore Theater in partnership with the Crown Plaza Resort here in Tumon. Let's bring out the candidates. Your candidates for Guam Delegate on stage tonight are Michael San Nicolas, who is #1 on the Democrat side of the primary ballot, and Ginger Cruz, #3 on the Democrat side of the primary ballot. Half-a-day candidates, go ahead and take your positions. An important note tonight, candidate Amanda Shelton declined to take part in the forum, and incumbent James Moylan is currently on official congressional business. So, half-a-day candidate San Nicolas, half-a-day candidate Cruz. Before tonight's show, the two did a coin toss to see which one will lead us off in responding to questions tonight. You each will get 60 seconds to respond to the questions, and the candidate going first and winning the coin toss is Ginger Cruz.
Before you start, where's the minute marker?
You'll get cued.
Okay.
Yes. The questions in this forum are coming from your news team. We are also proud to have more than a handful of local organizations attend tonight to make sure more of your voices are heard. Candidate Ginger Cruz. She's familiar to our airwaves and worked for both Guam and the federal government. In her platform 2.0, it states, Cruz knows that we face a defining moment in our history, a time of enormous threats and even greater opportunity. Guam needs a representative in D.C. who knows Washington and is bold, knowledgeable, creative, and resourceful. Candidate San Nicolas. He's worked in this position before, serving as Guam's senator, then congressman. In a campaign message, San Nicolas writes, this election doesn't need to be about wondering whether we can elect effective congressional representation, but simply whether we are willing to put politics aside and knowingly do so for the good of Guam. So let's get right to it. Again, each of you will have 60 seconds to respond to tonight's question. And again, we'll start with candidate Cruz. You'll see the timer down there. You will also hear, for our in-house audience here, a buzzer go off. So that will be your cue as well, that your time has run out.
Okay, and it's 30 seconds and?
It is 60, you'll get 30 seconds, heads up.
You don't get a 10-second?
No.
No. We're supposed to get a 10-second.
You got this.
Can you give us a 10-second? Like wave a hand when you get 10? Okay. Because usually in debates, that's the important one, is the 10.
I love the enthusiasm.
Right.
You can never take the TV out of a woman here, but thank you, candidate Cruz, for your suggestions.
All
Question
right.
#1.
Sure.
Given the current political landscape in the United States, characterized by deep polarization and partisan divides, how do you plan to effectively effectuate change and advocate for resources for our island as Guam's non-voting congressional delegate?
Thank you very much. Well, first of all, it's important to not think of our status as a non-voting delegate as a barrier, because Guam has a unique status. Guam can actually transcend so many different things precisely because we're not a state. And what we need to do is use it as an advantage. Because one of the things we can do as the only representative in Washington, D.C. for the people of Guam is to advocate for our people to Republican, to Democrat, to caucuses, to groups that can help us get what we need in Washington, D.C. And so I think just by being Guam and just by having issues that can bring all of the different parties together, I think that in itself is going to set an example for what civil politics needs to be. And watching the people in the United States and the horrible things that have happened in the past couple of days, that is not something that we want on Guam. We have enough Amaulik on Guam. We have a way of dealing with things that is best for the people of Guam, and that is what needs to be carried into Washington, D.C. Thank you.
Thank you, Candidate Cruz. Candidate San Nicolas, your response, 60 seconds.
Could you please repeat the question real quickly?
Sure. Given the current political landscape in the United States, characterized by deep polarization and partisan divides, how do you plan to effectively effectuate change and advocate for resources for our island as Guam's non-voting congressional delegate?
Thank you for the question, Nick. The partisanship and the polarization is actually nothing new in the Congress. It was there during my time while we were in Congress. In fact, when I first got elected as your congressman in the 116th Congress, we had a Democrat majority and a Republican Senate. In my second term serving you in the 117th Congress, we had a Democrat majority and a Democrat Senate. But Donald Trump was president during my first term, and President Biden was president during my second term. And so when we have these partisanship divides, they're not something new necessarily that we need to come up with new solutions for. What we need to do is we need to make sure that when we're communicating with all parties, whether they're Democrat or Republican, that we're coming to the table as honest brokers. We need to make sure that what we're saying is exactly what we mean. We can't be talking out of two sides of our mouth, and we need to make sure that when we talk about the issues, we're putting all the issues on the table, not just our issues. Because when Guam begins to talk about all the issues that affect the country with respect to our issues, that's when the entire country pays attention. Thank you.
Thank you for that response. All right, this next question will start with Candidate San Nicolas. What steps will you take to address the high cost of living on Guam, including the high prices of goods and services?
Well, the high price of goods and services is a problem that we're facing on our island. It's also a problem that we're facing across the country. And in order for us to be able to address that, we need to make sure that we have various sources of goods coming into our island. We need to address the different impacts that affect the cost of goods, from shipping to where we're sourcing those goods from in particular markets. You know, when we get bananas from Mexico, of course, the shipping of those bananas from Mexico is going to impact the price that we pay for that. When we have wonderful produce just to the south of us with our neighbors in the Federated States of Micronesia, literally having bananas falling off the trees. So we need to engage more partnerships with our brothers and sisters. We need to look for new markets in Asia to be able to bring those goods in and get around the Jones Act issue. And then we need to find creative solutions, and we have a number of them, to be able to make the Jones Act not so much of a problem when it comes to the prices that we're paying for goods and services here on island. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Cruz?
So the way that I'm looking at it is, one of the things Guam can be doing, if Washington, D.C. is saying that we are America in Asia, we need to leverage that and turn Guam into a transshipment hub, where instead of dividing the Pacific Ocean so that the different Pacific islands are not able to trade with each other, in order to turn to the east and get more of the goods and services, actually turn to the west, from Asia into Guam, just as we saw the prices drop when Don Don Donkey opened, we need to turn Guam into that transshipment hub. We need to lower the cost of airfare, lower the cost of shipping through the resourcefulness of the maritime strategy that is being redone in the Congress. Because actually the Jones Act doesn't apply to Guam. There are ways to get ships coming in from Asia, and that is what lowers cost. But in order to do both things, to lower the cost and to bring more opportunity to Guam, we need to look to Asia and encourage more trade to bring in greater amounts of goods so that the costs for our people on the island can go down. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question, we'll start with you again, Candidate Cruz. What measures will you take to combat the rising drug problem on Guam, including the trafficking and use of meth and fentanyl?
So I think it's absolutely abhorrent that we are not able to stop drugs that are coming in through the domestic mail service here in Guam. Did you know that right now, if you talk to the customs folks, that they can go through the international mail that comes in, but actually the causes of fentanyl and all of these other pills that are coming into the island most often come in through the domestic mail? And why is that? How is the federal government not providing us with a technology which is already readily available to put sniffers to ensure that when any drugs come through the U.S. Postal Service, we are able to stop that? We also need to get smart city technology so that we can put a barrier around Guam and get smart port technology so that we can interdict the drugs, because we're an island. We've got a barrier natural around us, that's the ocean. So if we can stop the drugs from coming in, that is going to be the critical first step. It may take us a while to do it, but in the federal government, I absolutely can see a clear path to getting that done. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate San Nicolas.
We need more tangible solutions to this very real problem here in our community. And one of the most tangible things that we can all put our finger on is the fact that we don't have enough federal personnel here on the island, particularly FBI agents. You know, one of the things that I had to deal with when I came back home was I had a family member that was dealing with a crime that would involve the federal government to be able to look into, because it was an interstate crime. And when I went down to the FBI office to try and engage them, there was a sign on the door that said, "Call this number and we'll be able to help you." Well, I tried calling the number, and it rang for 30 minutes before somebody finally picked up, and it was a number in the States. And I said, man, if our own people can't get help, or if they're having to go through this process to be able to report a crime, how much more to be able to get the boots on the ground to be able to go after and enforce the laws that we need enforced here on our island? So first and foremost, a tangible solution. We got to engage with the Federal Bureau of Investigation, tell them what our problem is, get more agents here on the ground, you know, because that's going to definitely beef up the enforcement and take these drugs off the street.
Thank you. Candidate San Nicolas, this next question will start with you. What measures will you support to enhance cybersecurity and protect Guam's critical infrastructure from cyber threats?
Well, the cybersecurity issue is a really big issue. In fact, when I was in the Financial Services Committee, it was so interesting because we had a briefing from Visa, and Visa said the fastest growing job market in the U.S., especially in their industry, has nothing to do with finance and everything to do with cybersecurity. What we need to do is we need to make sure that all of the different vulnerabilities are constantly being assessed, tested, and then find what those vulnerabilities are and get the resources in there to tighten up those vulnerabilities so that we're not exposing ourselves in that way. And so what's really great, Nick, is that this is not just a problem the federal government is looking to solve, but it's a problem the private sector is looking to get in front of. And so the best way for us to be able to engage solutions for our island in this way isn't to try and reinvent the wheel and grow it organically, but work with what the federal government is doing already in the federal side and work with the private sector side, because they have a lot of ideas to be able to make sure they tackle that particular problem.
Okay. Candidate Cruz.
So I was talking to someone who said that she was disappointed that her daughter wasn't going to be working hard at some office job or working in agriculture because she was always on her phone or on her computer. And I said immediately to myself, you know what we need to do? All of those kids who are so amazing on their phones and on their computers, those are the cybersecurity experts of tomorrow. You know, right now, most of the cybersecurity work that is done on Guam is done almost exclusively by contractors that we are flying in from the mainland. We are paying them huge salaries, and they're taking money off of our island. And our people are not getting that opportunity. What we need to do is we need to make AI and cyber and all of these things, which we know are going to be critical issues for Guam that are coming up, we need to make them opportunities so that our young people who are so amazing at technology, my 3-year-old is amazing on an iPad, and my 3-year-old grandson. So we need to turn that into an opportunity for them so that we can address two things at the same time. Make sure that we ensure cybersecurity and help jobs for our people. Thank you.
Thank you, Candidate Cruz. Next question, we'll start with you as well. How will you address the issues of food security and support local agriculture to reduce dependency on imported food?
We absolutely need more food security. I've been talking to folks that are in agriculture, and again, the problem there is a lot of the farmers are older farmers, and they're saying that their younger children or their families just don't want to sit out in the hot sun, slave away, and with the high costs of fertilizer and power and water and all the things that go into it, they're not even able to make a living, and I don't blame them. We have to find more creative ways. We have to talk about community farming and put more federal resources into doing collective collective farming so that we can lower the overall costs and make it something that becomes an opportunity for people where they can make money with hard work instead of something that is a drain on them that is causing more and more farmers to just give up and go out of business. And if we do that, and if we address some of the problems with the agriculture regulations, because that's one of those areas where the regulations don't really work for Guam. We can't bring in seedlings from the Philippines, which would grow here. We have to get ones from Texas, and those don't work here. So we have to address all of those issues on the federal government side to make it work. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Cruz. San Nicolas.
So having passed a bill under the Biden administration and having passed a bill under the Trump administration, we're able to get bipartisan support when it comes to these kind of common sense issues. And we were able to get actual funding to fund our fishermen's co-op and get a new facility up for those guys. And it's not just a matter of getting something new for them to be able to sell their fish in, but it's about being able to instill a sense of pride in the industry so that our people take pride in that industry, so we get more of our people doing that kind of stuff. And then all of a sudden, you know, we're gonna have more of our fishermen going out there, more of those goods coming in, and more sustainable foods getting onto our table. Same thing goes for livestock. We got funding for a livestock co-op also. To be able to address the livestock issue. And our livestock folks are so ingenious. You know, they said, we're not gonna go out there and just try and raise cattle. We're gonna go out there first and deal with the ungulate problem so we can tackle the wild pigs and bring that meat to table and get our people used to being able to eat what we have available. So our folks here are doing the work already. We've done some of the work to get the resources out there, but we gotta just keep supporting them, and that's something that we wanna do.
Thank you. Candidate Nicolas, this next question we'll start with you. What initiatives will you propose to improve mental health services and address the mental health crisis on island?
That is an issue that is not only a very dire issue today, but it's going to get worse, folks. As we deal with the drug problem here on our island and the price of drugs being as low as it is, as we tighten that up with the solutions we're talking about with you here today, that price of drugs is going to go higher. It's going to create an even greater mental health crisis here on our island. As the price becomes less affordable, people go out and steal more, addicts become more desperate. And so, you know, dealing with that's going to require an all-of-government solution. Of course, federally, we're going to go after every grant that we can possibly help identify our local government for. We'll go ahead and work for whatever funding we can get into different community project fundings. But in the end, we're going to have to all come together, federal, local, governor, congressman, and be not only tackling this problem now, but being aware of how much worse it's going to get when we start getting better at enforcing the drug problem.
Thank you. Candidate Cruz.
Thank you. We've got a fantastic nursing program at GCC and at the University of Guam, and we have to expand that because, again, it is about jobs and opportunity. This is an incredible opportunity for us to take our young people, train them so that we can have more experts here on island who are able to provide those mental health services, which are so needed not only by drug addicts, not only by people that have those problems, but also by our veteran community. You know, that's one of the biggest problems that we have on this island, is that veterans aren't getting the mental health services that they need. They're being made to fly all the way to Hawaii to get those services or do it on Zoom. Who gets mental health services on Zoom? That is an absolute travesty. We have to fix that. And we do that by harnessing more people trained to provide those types of services to our people, because that is our responsibility. Government has to take care of the mental health of the people of Guam. That is something that I would fight for very hard in Congress. Thank you.
All right, Candidate Cruz, we'll start with you for this next question. How will you ensure that the voices and concerns of Guam's indigenous Chamorro people are heard and addressed in federal policymaking?
Well, you know, so one of the things in my platform that you'll see online if you've checked it out at gingercruz.com is there is a regular pattern which really needs to be established to build a vision for Guam. And in order to do that, it's not just about the congressperson, and it's not just about the congressperson's immediate staff. It is about harnessing the knowledge that exists across this island, from the public sector to the indigenous rights groups to all of the civic groups. You have questions and you have answers. And the more you listen, the more easy it is for us to come up with solutions and things that we want to fight for in a vision for the people of Guam. I would open a dialogue and a conversation, have regular quarterly meetings, and have them help me put together an agenda to ensure that whether it's 2 years or whether it outlasts any single delegate, that we start to build a vision for what we want to honor and to include the thoughts and the wishes of the indigenous people of Guam. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Nicolas.
Could you repeat the question, because I know it's about our indigenous people. I want to get it absolutely right.
How will you ensure that the voices and concerns of Guam's indigenous Chamorro people are heard and addressed in federal policymaking?
Well, I think if you want to make sure their voices are heard, you got to always just be mindful of what those voices are saying back home. And when you're addressing issues in the Congress, you got to do so with a memory of what those voices have said in the past. But I think those voices too, they want to see progress on the issue. They don't just want us to be talking about the indigenous situation, because that's been talked about for a very long time already. It's time for us to begin moving that issue forward and taking tangible steps to make sure our indigenous people are getting some kind of progress on their indigenous circumstances. We worked on that. We did the work for that. We were able to introduce legislation to begin that step by getting native contracting recognition for our people. And this is huge, not just for our indigenous community, but for our economy, because there are billions and billions of dollars in set-aside funding, Section 7A funding in the SBA that automatically goes to these particular groups. And so we got the ball rolling on that. We want to keep it going. And once we get that established and we get that toehold in, all the other indigenous and native issues can begin to follow after that. We want to work on that.
Thank you. All right, Candidate San Nicolas, this is the last question for this round, and we'll start with you. What steps will you take to improve border security and prevent illegal immigration by boat from the CNMI and other regions? And how will you advocate for more federal resources to strengthen Guam's maritime surveillance and enforcement capabilities?
Well, we do have some border issues, with the stories that hit our headlines every now and then of boatloads of illegal migrants being found. And those kind of circumstances need to be caught, before they actually touch down. And it's not happening as often as they should be happening. More investments in our Coast Guard, getting more coordination between our Coast Guard and our local government, and making sure that there's a greater transparency in the work they're doing, so we can see what the potential gaps might be and fill those gaps. That all needs to happen and continue happening. The border issue, is a very exasperated issue in the States. And one of the things we need to be careful of when we address that issue is we need to, of course, understand the problem and tackle it, such as the illegal immigrants coming in on the waters. But we also need to make sure that we don't put our foot in our mouth and then begin attacking the migrant issue altogether, because we still have H-2B workers that we want to bring in. And that problem also needs to get resolved in order for us to bring down our housing costs that are just way too high. So it's a very delicate balance, but we have the experience and the know-how to be able to navigate that very fine line.
Thank you. Candidate Cruz.
Thank you. So my question to the federal government on that issue would be, immigration policy is costing the people of Guam hundreds of millions of dollars that we have not been reimbursed for. And so why would the people of Guam spend our time advocating for resources for the federal government to do its job on an immigration issue? I think before we go advocating for that, which they're going to do anyways, because that is a federal issue. The federal government controls our immigration. The federal government is going to make sure that illegal immigrants don't come to our shores, because that is their mandate to do that. And our role in that is not the important role. The important role that we have is to make sure that the immigration regulations that cause so many problems for our island because of the unfunded outcomes that are stressing our hospital, that are stressing our school systems. The fact that we lost compact impact funding after decades of getting it, that impact is being felt right now by the people of Guam. The immigration people need to take care of their own issue. Thank you.
Candidate Cruz, Candidate San Nicolas, thank you so much for your time. Let's give them a round of applause for this first round. Coming up, local organizations take over to ask questions to your candidates. You're watching the 2024 Congressional Candidate Forum live from the Crown Plaza Resort.
So last year I taught U.S. foreign policy to some really bright students. They were amazing. It was those UOG students that really got me to think, if you're going to be the next generation, and I'm asking you to be prepared to tackle these things, why don't I put my money where my mouth is? Why don't I get up and do it? Guam is at a really critical time right now. The competition with China, the threats from North Korea and Russia, and what that's going to do to us on Guam. We need to have representation in DC that understands that and is able to defend Guam and able to make sure that Guam's interests are never left behind. I am a daughter of Guam. I've done my part and learned what I needed to learn, so that if I say to folks, I'm going to go and see how we can fix these things, I'm not just saying that. I'm ready to do that. And I just want to do something meaningful. I believe that the time has come for me to see if people will agree and give me their trust.
I'm Ginger Cruz, candidate for Congress, and I approve this ad.
On Guam, not everyone is focused on upward mobility. Many struggle just to be mobile. Not everyone is opportunistic. Some just want an opportunity. Not everyone is looking for the huge payoff. Some are struggling just to make it to the next payday. For so many, the struggle is real. Those are the people I want to serve. They are the reason I am running.
I'm Sabrina Salas-Matanani, and I approve this message.
Hi, I'm Steve Scalise, the Majority Leader in the House of Representatives. I just want to thank you for sending James Moylan to Congress. He's a hard worker who consistently fights for the people of Guam here in our nation's capital. Jim's work has only just begun, which is why I encourage you to send him back to Congress so he can continue advocating for Guam. He makes sure your priorities are heard loud and clear. Thank you.
She's solid, she's substantive, she's well-informed, and she will make good decisions.
To work for the people of Guam, to improve the situation for our individuals, working families, and the people of Guam. So please.
Vote for Sabrina Salas-Matanani for Senator.
I humbly ask for your support.
And vote for Sabrina Salas-Matanani.
I'm Sabrina Salas-Matanani, and I humbly ask for your vote.
I'm Sabrina Salas-Matanani, and I approve this message.
I'm Tony Atta, and I approve this message.
Tony Atta produced quality legislation as a senator. Laws that prioritize our needs and keep our people safe. His Castle Doctrine legislation is the strongest law of the land, which allows us to protect our loved ones at home. But Tony's been serving our community long before he became a senator. So when people say, I'm glad Tony's back in politics, we say, no, Tony never left leadership. Vote Tony Atta for senator. It's time to bring back the quality.
All right, Hafaday, and welcome back to the 2024 Primary Congressional Candidate Forum, coming to you from the beautiful Encore Theater here at the Crown Plaza Resort. Now, obviously, we love feedback here at KUAM, and we have some feedback from our community organizations, thank you, and for the candidates. Now, candidates, we'll do the same format as the previous segment. We'll go right to left and left to right, if that's okay with you. And for our first organization, we have from our friends at the Guam Medical Association, Dr. Len Nguyen. Good evening, Doctor.
Good evening, thank you. So with the upcoming military buildup and large medical clinics opening on base, the public-private entities like GMH, GRMC, and private practices are at risk of losing its clinical staff, including nurses, medical assistants, and technicians to the federal positions on base. This will greatly impact the care of patients in the community. What will you do to ensure that the buildup doesn't impact the healthcare of Guam outside the fence?
Yeah, Ginger, you have 60 seconds, please.
Thank you very much. Well, the first thing we need to do is we need to make sure that we are at the table on the Armed Services Committee to ensure that anything the military does that has an unintended impact that hurts the people of Guam outside the fence is addressed before it becomes a problem. Because it's the health care of our people on Guam that has to be our first concern. And so the military, if they are going to be putting a clinic and they're going to be paying a little bit more money and taking away and poaching our medical nurses and our doctors, there has to be an offset. For everyone that they take, they either have to be able to help us recruit and retain a doctor for the rest of us on the island, they have to be able to help us train more doctors and nurses here from our local community, or they have to provide a financial offset for everything that they're doing. There cannot be a negative impact on the population of Guam because of a military buildup. Those have to be leveled out. There's an Office of Local Defense Cooperation where I'm looking at doing some amendments to do just that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ginger. Congressman San Nicolas, you have 60 seconds, sir.
Thank you so much. I think that answer is a pretty solid answer. I think on top of that, we need to understand that when those facilities do come online and those personnel do get attracted to those particular positions, can you guys hear me okay? Because my mic is a little, they get attracted to those particular positions, it's really for one of two reasons, right? It's either one, the facility and the equipment that they have there is something that's attractive for them, it's an attractive workplace environment, or two, the compensation's better. Because let's face it, our folks would love to work at home. They would love to work for our civilian community in our own local establishments. But when our facilities are so far behind where they're supposed to be, and when our compensation scales are at a level that they're not necessarily going to be competitive, that's when we're going to see a lot of attrition problems. So on top of trying to make sure the federal government is going to be doing what it's supposed to do in matching and everything else, we need to make sure that we're vocal advocates. We're vocal advocates for making sure our local facilities are up to par and our local compensation scales are up to par.
All right, thank you very much. Well done, candidates. Now, speaking of advocates, our friends at Pratehi Tech Center here, and Mineka Flores is here. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you. Research has shown that the military-industrial complex causes cycles of immense environmental destruction, indigenous land and resource desecration, gendered and sexual violence, poverty, coerced loyalty and dependency, challenges to our self-determination and decolonization, aggravation to the climate crisis, and triggers for war crimes and genocides in Palestine, Syria, Sudan, and other parts of the world. What is your understanding of the military-industrial complex and its link to Congress, and how will you work to address the lack of transparency about the rapid militarization of our island and our inability to say no to the harms forced upon us?
All right, Mr. San Nicolas, you have 60 seconds, please.
As far as the transparency and that particular concern, I've noticed a lot of transparency in terms of the public engagement forums, getting people to be able to come out and speak. In fact, when the federal government moves forward with these kind of issues, and they do environmental impact studies to be able to gauge what the impacts of the bases are, and it involves the input of the community, I find it to be almost an ideal model for what we should be doing in our local government. You know, so I really like how things have evolved, but don't get me wrong, the history of the military-industrial complex is a sad one. They really have not done right by the communities that they've impacted over many decades of the past. Those historical grievances do need to be addressed, but I am glad that the science has improved, that the responsiveness has improved, and I want to keep moving us forward in that direction in a good partnership with our military brothers and sisters who help to keep us safe and help to keep our country safe.
All right, Ginger Cruz, your thoughts, please.
So for 8 years, I worked for the Deputy Inspector General for Iraq Reconstruction, and our job was to hold the military-industrial complex accountable. One of the ways to do that is to have an oversight capability. And in Congress, there are oversight committees, and they do a good job of that. We could talk to those oversight committees and ensure that when the military is doing all of the things that it does on the island, and precisely because we're an unincorporated territory, they have so much more leeway to do things on our island. I think transparency is important. I think we have to ensure through the Congress that the oversight committee and the opportunities for us to hold hearings in order to draw from the military the kind of information that we need so we are fully aware of what is happening to our island is something that needs to be addressed, and it needs to be ensured so that the people of Guam know what is happening to us, so that we don't end up with PFAS contamination that we didn't expect, so that we don't end up with a brown tree snake that ends up eradicating all of our native birds. We have to do better because we have to take care of our island. Thank you.
All right, now affordable housing, available housing, of course, is an ongoing issue. Our friends at the Guam Association of Realtors are here right now to share some of their concerns. Hafide and good evening.
Hafide. With the ongoing military buildup on Guam, there have been both positive and negative impacts on the island's real estate market. How do you plan to address the challenges and the opportunities this presents, particularly in terms of housing affordability for local residents and infrastructure demands on the island?
All right, Ginger Cruz, 60 seconds, please.
Thank you. So first of all, we need to get the military to be held accountable for the impact that they are causing in making the amount of housing availability to shrink, which is causing it to increase the prices. And then our local families can't find housing because military contractors are buying up houses, cutting them into apartments, and shoving all of their contractors in there. We need to stop that. So if we put provisions in contracts, and we do that through the Congress, we can ensure, again, that there are offsets. So that does two things. It gives us the financial backing to be able to address some of those things, and it also causes a chilling effect, and it causes the military to make sure that they're going to find housing for the people that they're going to bring to the island so it doesn't displace our people. In addition, we have to bring down the cost of housing. The Congress is already looking, and I am sure they're going to do this in the next session, at ways to finance more infrastructure so that we can build more housing and incentivize investments so that we can make more affordable housing for the people of Guam. Thank you.
Mike San Nicolas, what say you on the topic of housing?
Thank you, Jason. Thank you to our GAR friends for the question. Yeah, the military absolutely does impact our housing markets. There are a whole lot of other variables that impact our housing markets. In the end, it comes to a supply and demand problem. And as the military begins to move its personnel over here and the demand that builds up, it takes away from the supply. Of course, that's going to create greater housing strain. The solution to that is to create more supply. And you can create more supply by getting the military to invest in more housing behind the fence, which they are already doing. I believe $200 million in the most recent spend has come out again for more housing. And I do know when I was in the Congress that we sat down and worked with them to make sure they were mapping out more housing spending to come through the pipeline. But on top of that, we need to go after other federal resources that we were very interested in pursuing. Native funding for native housing. There's a lot of money out there that we can use for that. I really would love to get those funds to be able to fund our Chamorro Land Trust, to be able to get that inventory of land, the housing that it needs to be able to bring down, to raise up the supply and bring down the housing prices just by getting the supply out there. So there's a lot of solutions and we want to work on them.
All right, so we thank our friends from the Guam Association of Realtors bringing up the topic of housing. Of course, Veterans Affairs and Veteran Support is a responsibility of our delegate, and Roy Gamboa is with Got Your 671. Roy, of course, a former U.S. Marine. I apologize, Roy. A lifetime, always a Marine.
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you for your service, first of all, and thank you for being with us.
You are worth it, sir. Question is, how will you ensure that funding and resources for veteran health care and well-being programs are not only maintained, but increased to meet the growing needs of our veteran population?
Mike San Nicolas, please.
Thank you for the question, Roy. One of the things that I brought up, and it was actually very almost revolutionary in the Congress, was on my last few months when I was in there, I said, hey guys, you know, one of the things I'm thinking about as we ponder the next steps is, why isn't the veterans budget included in the National Defense Authorization Act? Why is it that we fund the entire military industrial complex through a must-pass bill that everybody eventually gets behind, but for some reason we segregate out the veteran money and we put it through all these other hoops that are so much more challenging to get all the funding for? And I said, guys, I want to start talking about us putting the Veterans Affairs budget into the NDAA. And you know, that really caught some attention. I think if we bring that issue up to our veteran services organizations nationally, begin rallying grassroots support for something like that, and get a solution like that, we won't just solve the veteran funding challenges we're facing here on Guam, we'll solve it across the country. Because they will pass that veterans budget as urgently as they want to pass funding that new aircraft carrier or funding those pay raises for the active duty troops. The veterans funding will finally be resolved. It's going to be an uphill battle, but I think we can do it.
All right, and then finally, Ginger Cruz, supporting those who served.
Absolutely. So I served next to the men and women in uniform in Iraq, and I'll tell you, I understand that sacrifice, which is why this is a very personal thing for me. And I want to go bigger. I want to go a lot bigger. Because if we take Guam out from where it currently is, under the Department of Interior, and we move the oversight of Guam to the White House, you know what that does? That gets the White House's attention. And when we have the White House's attention, when we say, how can you make Guam the center of the debate between China and the United States on who is going to run the world, and have all of this military equipment and all of these military bases here, and have our veterans have to fly 7 hours to Hawaii to be able to get services, that is wrong. We have to move those services to Guam. We have to have the health care available here. They have to get their medication here, because this is where their families are, and this is where they need that service. You know, there was somebody the other day, there was a veteran whose wife was trying to raise the funds because the airfare was too damn expensive, and by the time they got the donations, he passed away. We cannot do that. That health care has to be on this island, and elevating Guam to the White House will help us get there. Thank you.
All right, thank you very, very much, both of you. We are going to take a quick commercial break, but we have covered so far advocacy, the military-industrial complex, health and wellness, real estate, veterans affairs, and much more. And there is much more coming right back when we return.
I am so proud to endorse my good friend Jim Moylan to continue serving you, the people of Guam, as a member of the House of Representatives. In just his first term, Jim has built many great relationships here in Congress, which benefit the island of Guam. As a member of the Armed Services Committee, he has fought to defend the island and the Indo-PACOM region while securing many victories to help Guam's economy. This is just the start. Let's return Jim to the halls of Congress this November. Viva Guam!
School is just around the corner, and there are over 600 foster children in need of school supplies. KUAM Care Force is partnering with Harvest House to host their annual Back to School donation drive. You can participate by visiting the designated donation boxes at Kmart. Just purchase a backpack and fill it up with school supplies to place in the designated boxes. Last day to donate is Thursday, July 25th. A special thanks to our community partners, Kmart, your 24-hour superstore, and Ohima Medical Guam. Call them at 671-646-1440 to schedule your students' back-to-school physicals.
One of the major concerns that our people are very interested in is the status of our health care. The costs keep rising. People still have to go outside of Guam for medical treatment and so forth. I think I see in her a brand new type of leadership, one with commitment, with passion, in making sure that the health needs of our people are taken care of. Please vote for Sabrina Salas Matanami for Senator.
I'm Sabrina Salas Matanani, and I approve this message.
When my career in 1999 took me off of Guam, I wanted to go and learn more. I wanted to gain more experience. I was able to operate at the highest levels of Washington, D.C. I was a Deputy Assistant Secretary at Housing and Urban Development. I was the Deputy Inspector General for Iraq Reconstruction, reporting to a Secretary of Defense, a Secretary of State, and 8 committees of Congress, both the Senate and the House side. Guam is how I got there. I was able to succeed because of everything that I learned. But I was always going to come home to bring that experience, to bring that back to Guam so that I could do something that made a difference. I'm Ginger Cruz, candidate for Congress, and I approve this ad.
Proud mother and grandmother, Shelley's broad experience spans from Silicon Valley management to chairing Guam's homeless coalition. As our senator, Shelley will create career opportunities for our next generation, pull people out of poverty, and will vigorously protect Guam's children from predators. Shelley is equal parts passion and compassion. If bringing values and unity to the legislature is important to you, please vote Shelley Calvo for senator.
I'm Shelley Calvo, and I approve this message.
Red. Closer to me. Got it. Thank you.
Welcome back to your 2024 Congressional Candidate Forum, coming to you from the Crown Plaza Resort, brought to you also live thanks to our partners at Docomo Pacific. This round also goes to the community organizations in attendance. Again, candidates each will get 60 seconds to respond, and our Jason Salas will introduce the next organization.
All right, thank you very much, Nick. And I'm joined right now by Kathy Castro of the Guam Chamber of Commerce, representing, of course, island businesses for a variety of industries. Kathy, there's a lot on your plate, and I'm sure you've got some very intriguing questions to ask.
Hafide, and thank you very much for both of you for being here tonight. Our question is, while the Guam Chamber of Commerce supports economic diversification, tourism continues to remain an important pillar of our community and a lifeline for our small businesses. Other than the military buildup, if elected, what actions would you take to help diversify our economy both for the short term and the long term?
And let's start with Ginger Cruz. 60 seconds, please.
All right, thank you. So absolutely, tourism needs to be enhanced. And one of the ways that we can do that is now that the United States is investing so heavily in Asia, they've got the Luzon Economic Corridor, they're doing more with Korea, more with Japan. We need to turn Guam into, seriously, America in Asia. We need to start bringing some of those conferences. We need to start bringing those businesses and have them meeting instead of in Manila or in Australia or in Korea. We need to have them meeting on Guam. So then instead of just having families and just having tourists coming to our island, we create a whole new opportunity to hold conferences here so that we can get more sectors of the population to come here. And then while they're here on conferences, the opportunity to then pitch them, to get them to put potentially offices here and hire our people and give them good paying jobs. I think this is one of the most promising ways to do this, and one of the ways that we can push in the Congress to get them to put Guam in the center of the economic development that's currently being done with the rest of the Asia Pacific. Thank you.
All right, Mike San Nicolas, your thoughts, please.
Thank you so much, and thank you for the question, Kathy, and thanks to the Guam Chamber. I'm going to try and get closer to this thing because I'm being told that I'm not. Okay, there we go. So first and foremost, on the short-term outlook, we passed something in the Guam legislature when I was a senator to create a tax credit for the repatriation of U.S. dollars back into the United States, but channeling that repatriation through Guam. What that would do is if we were to do that and give a qualifying certificate and maybe 75% of the corporate income taxes, those $20 billion that normally would be taxed at 37% will get taxed at a fraction of that, 1/4 of that, which we could keep here. We're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars that would still save those companies billions of dollars and allow for those dollars to be repatriated back into the US. It was opportune back then. It's even more opportune now because interest rates are higher in the US, and so the cost to borrow capital is more expensive, and if you're able to repatriate that, they can capture higher interest rates with deposit accounts. So that's something that we can do right now. On the long term, we want to keep working the financial services angle. We want to bring those financial services houses back here to Guam, make them close their deals here, capture the tax revenue here.
All right, thank you very much. All right, well done. Okay, well, ladies and gentlemen, Pride Month, of course, just concluded a couple weeks ago, but the need to educate, to integrate, to advocate, of course, continues. Roquan Shanko is with Equality Guam. Very good to have you. Hafade.
Hafade, thank you for having us. With the release of the Heritage Foundation's 900-page plan titled 2025 Mandate for Leadership, which is a conservative blueprint for President Trump's potential second term and contains many plans to dismantle LGBTQIA+ rights in America, will you, if elected, be Guam delegate, make it a priority to protect LGBTQIA+ rights while in the Capitol? Please state your position and why that is your position. Thank you.
All right, Mike San Nicolas, 60 seconds, please.
Of course, protect it. You know, the courts already made it very clear what those rights are, and we have no business trying to take those rights away. I think that it's not a good idea for us to try and walk rights back, especially in a country that's always trying to constantly push rights forward. So, fully support it. Don't know how much more I can advocate it other than that. You know, I do want to talk about another issue that's concerning the community that was brought to my attention a while ago, and that was the lack of access to hormone treatment here for some of our trans community. I heard there was a very tragic outcome where the trans community was having a hard time accessing those hormones. They were sharing it in order to just try and help each other out, and then it created some mental health challenges that resulted in some very serious tragedies. We need to do better to make sure that our brothers and sisters are getting the support they need medically. You know, regardless of what your opinion is on that, people should not be dying because they're trying to find ways to help themselves. So I just wanted to speak on that issue as well, but thank you so much for bringing this issue up today.
All right, Ginger, you were asked to take a position on that. What is yours?
Absolutely. And not only am I firmly in support of it, I am actually extremely worried. Because, you know, in the country that we live in today, I didn't think it was possible in my lifetime. I turned 59 yesterday. And you see all of the advances that we have made in obtaining LGBTQ rights, in obtaining rights for women, in obtaining rights for all of the people that are left behind, indigenous people, minorities. And every single case you're seeing it rolled back. We are looking at a world in Washington, D.C., where there are major amounts of people that want to take away the rights of LGBTQ people. If you just look at the National Defense Authorization Act, there were attacks in there that didn't even deal with defense. They were attacking people and rights that we have fought so hard to obtain. So this isn't just, yes, I support it. This is a war. This is going to be a culture war. And if we want this to be America, where everyone is created equal and everyone has the right to live their life and love who they want, we have to fight it. Thank you.
All right, well done. Thank you very much. All right, the Guam Bar Association is a membership consisting of practitioners of law and good ethics. Attorney Jay Arreola is here. Hafade.
Hafade and buenas, KUAM, and thank you for presenting tonight's effort at democracy in action. People in Guam take our politics and our elections very seriously. Voting is a right that comes with the responsibility of becoming informed. Candidates and the community at large have an obligation to public discourse, to compare and contrast themselves with the other candidates, and ensure that we have a well-informed electorate. The congressional election is the election this year. It is imperative we engage all candidates. What is your opinion about the decision of some candidates to decline to participate in forums such as this, or in some candidates to boycott or decline to respond to media inquiries and interviews with our delegate?
Very interesting question, and we'll start with Ginger Cruz on the topic of not participating.
Thank you very much. Well, as a former news director and somebody who firmly believes that civil discourse is at the heart of a functioning democracy, I think what we are seeing is a decay. I think we are seeing a time when People choose not to participate in things which are not just casually thrown at them. It is a responsibility. The voters are going through a job interview with all of us, and all of us owe to you. If we are asking you to become your elected representatives, then we owe you answers. And if we say, I don't feel like showing up today, or I'm busy, or I can't come here, then you know what? That is not treating the voters with the respect that they deserve. The voters deserve that respect. That, to me, is a huge sign of disrespect. Because you know what? If you can't show up on a stage and you can't debate in front of the people of Guam, then how are you going to represent Guam in Washington, D.C., in front of that stage with all of those people? You have to be there for the people. Whether it's convenient, whether it's strategic, it doesn't matter. That is what the people deserve. Thank you.
Thank you, Ginger. All right, Mike San Nicolas, your thoughts to Jay's very intriguing question.
Well, Jay, I'll tell you right now, I'm not going to be voting for any of them. I don't think Ginger's going to be voting for any of them either. But in all seriousness, Ginger, of course, raised a lot of the good points there. But when it comes to these kind of political decisions that are being made at the campaign levels, whether to participate or not in forums, whether to come out and engage the community or not, whether to rely on heavy advertising versus coming out and talking to folks, those decisions are being made by political organizations trying their best to be able to situate their candidate based on what their strengths are and to mitigate what they think their potential weaknesses are. But in the end, the people of Guam are going to come out, they're going to vote for who it is that they're going to support, who it is that they believe is going to do a good job for them in Congress. And these are one of those opportunities to do that. Congress is a very engaging type of job. You got to talk to people like we're talking now. You got to get on the microphone and you got to talk in committees to agencies and to witnesses that you call before you. And then you got to be able to banter with your colleagues who are going to push back on you with amendments. So it's all about engagement.
All right, thank you very much. And thank you, Jay.
Thank you.
All right, very well done. All right, let's bring up the Guam Women's Chamber of Commerce now, an organization that provides training programs, education, a lot of positive, uplifting things for women-owned businesses and women in general. Samantha Taitino is here. Hafade, Sam.
Good evening. Some national news agencies have reported that the Supreme Court of the United States may reconsider precedent which has guaranteed a woman's right to contraceptives. Do you support policies that protect and uphold women's reproductive health rights, including access to comprehensive reproductive health care services, contraception, and safe and legal abortion?
Mr. San Nicolas, 60 seconds on this, please.
Well, if those are rights that are going to be enumerated under law, those are rights that are going to be enumerated under law by the courts. So that's basically what your opening line is there. As far as what my personal positions are on that, I think that contraceptives are a part of making sure that everyone has access to good birth control, and that's important. My wife and I, our family, we're a pro-life family. And so when it comes to that particular issue, we're very careful about how we address that when it comes to our personal values. But as far as whether or not the courts are going to define what that particular reproductive health care is going to look like, that's something that I think is very necessary, because our community right now is kind of in limbo with the courts turning over Roe v. Wade. They basically said that it was not supposed to be a court decision, it's supposed to be a state decision. And here on Guam, we haven't even addressed that issue yet. And so I think that locally we need to get more engagement going on that. I think a referendum would be a really great start for our people, get a handle on where everyone stands on that particular question. And then from here, as public advocates, get behind what our people decide.
All right, let's now give a minute to Ginger Cruz on the topic of reproductive health.
Thank you very much. So The Handmaid's Tale, how many of you watched that? I just fear what is happening to our country, and here is why. I absolutely believe in the sanctity of life, but I also believe that a group of people that are not doctors, that are not women, who legislate things that are going to make decisions to save a woman's life not possible because of some reason that the law finds that it wants to involve itself. I think that is not where our country needs to be. My entire life, a woman and her doctor have been able to make the decisions that are the best for her life. Absolutely. For all of the pro-life groups, advocate for that. Talk to your family and friends. Nurture them. Adopt children that are out there, but under no circumstances is some group of lawmakers, without a huge fight from me, going to tell women what we can do with our bodies in every single circumstance, because that is dangerous, because then we lose the right to contraception, then we lose the right to IVF, and all of these things are going to place us into this dystopian nightmare, so we have to fight.
Thank you, Ginger. And thank you, Sam. Okay, so we've talked with a lot of different groups here, a lot of experienced veteran members, tenured members across the industry. Another group is the youth and the people that, the young adults who will be going to the polls for the very first time. They may be standing on this stage in a few years, seeking public office themselves. So we have our Spark ambassadors who are amazing voices for their generation. So Hafide, thanks for being with us.
Thank you. So Guam faces challenges with infrastructure development, particularly related to transportation and school campus maintenance. And recently, there's been lots of commotion around the island regarding public school campuses deteriorating, being infested, and simply being outdated. So what federal initiatives or funding opportunities will you pursue to improve infrastructure for the youth and the people of the island? Thank you.
Ginger Cruz, infrastructure, please.
Thank you very much. Well, on that specific issue of infrastructure for our schools, there's, I think, about $80 million that still sits in an account that can be used to fix those schools, and it's not being used. You know why? It's the same problem that was there 20, 30 years ago when I worked down at Adelup for both a Republican and a Democrat administration. It's a broken procurement system. A broken procurement system is stopping so much of what is happening on this island. It is affecting our schools. It is causing an entire group of high school students to lose their future because they have to double up on their sessions and they're not getting all of the things that a normal teenager would be able to do in these most important formative years of their life. We have to fix the procurement system. There's a group in Boston. They can come out to Guam. I'm going to work my hardest to get the small grant that is needed to bring them out here, embed them in Guam, and in 6 months they will be able to help us to reform that procurement system so that instead of having an excuse, instead of leaving the $80 million in a bank account, we can fix those schools and get our children back where they're learning and back so they can have a future.
Mike San Nicolas, infrastructure quite literally the scaffolding upon which our community stands. So what are your thoughts on improving that?
The procurement system does need to be improved. But I don't think that is the reason why we're having all these problems. I think politics is the reason why we're having all of these problems. And I think that we need to have our people, especially in these positions, and especially if we're going to be seeking these positions, speaking the truth to our community and being brave enough to get out there and talk about these things so that people will get off their butts and stop politicking over children's futures or over our hospital. The money is there. We brought in almost $200 million in pandemic funds that was over 4 years ago now. All this money came into our island, and I was the only one out there fighting for it. People were fighting against me, pushing back and trying to get these funds to be used for the right reason. And now we're coming up on the deadline. Everyone's saying, oh, we're going to loot, it's all going to pass. And no one wants to take responsibility for this not happening. We need to be advocating for these issues. We need to be strong voices when we have these offices and when the people give us these platforms. Otherwise, all we're doing is we're just pointing fingers and blaming, when the reality is we have responsibilities and we need to vocalize what everyone's responsibility is supposed to be around here.
Thank you very much. Thank you. All right, our Spark ambassadors, the Guam Women's Chamber of Commerce, the Guam Bar Association, Equality Guam, and the Guam Chamber of Commerce. Nick, there's really good stuff.
Really good. Thank you, Jason, for that. Thank you all to those organizations as well for participating today and making sure that our community's voices are really heard. We're going to take another break, but more questions from the candidates when we return. Keep it here.
Sabrina brings maturity. She brings leadership. She brings influence. She has a keen understanding of the issues, and we need that type of leadership, this fresh blood, this new perspective. And I see in her as a person who is a servant leader. So I really think this is a time for people of her caliber. I humbly ask for your support for Sabrina Salas-Metanani for Senator.
I'm Sabrina Salas-Metanani, and I approve this message.
Gear up for the ultimate celebration of Guam's 80th Liberation Day holiday with Kmart's Liberation Celebration Giveaway. Whether you're set up along the parade route or barbecuing at home, Kmart is ready to make it a day to remember. To enter, all you have to do is follow these simple steps. Share your favorite Liberation Day photos through the years with KUAM Circular or KUAM News on Instagram or Facebook by July 18th. And be a follower of KUAM Circular and Kmart Guam 7705 on Instagram or Facebook. Get your photos ready and share your cherished memories with us. Winners will be chosen at random and announced on Friday, July 19th, just in time for Liberation Day. All photo submissions will also be featured in a special Liberation Day montage on KUAM News. Win big and celebrate in style this Liberation Day with Kmart.
So last year I taught U.S. foreign policy to some really bright students. They were amazing. It was those UOG students that really got me to think, if you're going to be the next generation, and I'm asking you to be prepared to tackle these things, why don't I put my money where my mouth is? Why don't I get up and do it? Guam is at a really critical time right now. The competition with China, the threats from North Korea and Russia, and what that's going to do to us on Guam. We need to have representation in DC that understands that and is able to defend Guam and able to make sure that Guam's interests are never left behind. I am a daughter of Guam. I've done my part and learned what I needed to learn so that if I say to folks, I'm going to go and see how we can fix these things, I'm not just saying that. I'm ready to do that. And I just want to do something meaningful. I believe that, you know, the time has come for me to see if people will agree and give me their trust.
I'm Ginger Cruz, candidate for Congress, and I approve this ad.
Hi, I'm Steve Scalise, the Majority Leader in the House of Representatives. I just want to thank you for sending James Moylan to Congress. He's a hard worker who consistently fights for the people of Guam here in our nation's capital. Jim's work has only just begun, which is why I encourage you to send him back to Congress so he can continue advocating for Guam. He makes sure your priorities are heard loud and clear. Thank you.
This is your 2024 Primary Congressional Candidate Forum. We are inside the Encore Theater at the Crown Plaza Resort with some feedback for you. Our live stream coming to you thanks to our sponsors at Docomo Pacific. Let's get some more questions for the candidates. And for this round, we'll start with candidate San Nicolas. Your first question: how will you work to attract federal investment and grants to boost Guam's infrastructure and economic development?
Well, we've done that. We've done that on multiple occasions, and there's always various windows throughout the congressional calendar to be able to do that. The key is to be able to engage members in a way that's going to articulate what the need is, but do it in a fashion that's going to make sense for the greater mentality of the nation. In other words, right now, whenever you want to spend $1 in the Congress, they have a rule called pay-go. You want to spend $1, you got to offset $1 somewhere else, and so trying to find money can get challenging, but if you're able to marry up the use of those funds of what is a greater overarching national concern, then all of a sudden the money becomes available. And so one of the things that we were able to do that was very artful was in trying to get H-2B workers to be able to come to Guam for housing and for outside of the fence projects. We first engaged our allies in the Foreign Affairs Committee, and we said, hey, look, guys, when we have the highest visitors per capita coming to Guam from Asia, and they're seeing Guam in disrepair, that's not helping the American image. We need to invest in these kind of things to make sure our best foot is being put forward. We do that on all these other issues, we'll be able to get more funding.
Thank you. Candidate Cruz?
Can you repeat the question,
Sure.
please? Thank you.
How will you work to attract federal investment and grants to boost Guam's infrastructure and economic development?
Okay, well, I have a completely different idea for grants because you know what? Again, I've been around for a long time, and for decades, we've not really done very well on grants. So what we need to do is we need to create a grant center of excellence on our island. We need to bring in some federal support. We need to train up a core group of people, harness AI technology, and then provide support to all of the agencies and to the mayor's offices and to nonprofits and for-profits who can actually pay for the service. Because there are a ton of other funding sources that are available all over the globe. There are regional organizations from Japan or Australia. There's not only federal grants. There are the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and Guam is the perfect place to go after some of these grants, and we need those grants on Guam. We need to expand where we look, and we need to improve the way that we apply for them and the way that we respond to them and the way that we file all the paperwork, because then when we do a good job, we're going to get more, because we need to do something that breaks us out of what we've been doing and do something better. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Cruz, this next question will start with you. What are your plans to ensure that Guam has adequate civil defense systems and emergency preparedness for potential attacks?
So that's something that the federal government has really fallen down on the job, and our delegate in Washington, D.C. cannot let that happen, because there is no other city in the United States right now that is facing the challenges that Guam is facing. We are not fully comprehending sometimes that there are missiles aimed at Guam right now. There are exercises going on all across Asia, both from North Korea and from China, that are aiming missiles at our island. We have to be prepared. We don't have a regular civil defense office. We shouldn't have a regular National Guard. We should be getting dramatically more resources and support immediately, because if the military is in full strength preparation in order to protect military personnel and military resources, then the people of Guam who asked to be self-governing, we have to make sure that we are protecting the people of Guam over an existential threat. And we have to do better, and we have to get more out of the federal government.
Candidate San Nicolas?
Could you repeat the question, please?
Sure. What are your plans to ensure that Guam has adequate civil defense systems and emergency preparedness for potential attacks?
Well, I think we need to make sure that we have, all the information necessary for us to be able to put those kind of things together. But I think we also need to be realistic with our people. Okay, first of all, Guam is not the only target in the United States. There are targets all over this country that missiles are being aimed at. And so when you're going to be going after resources to protect our island, you need to do it again within the context of what fits within the national framework. If we think that we're going to go out there and we're going to get billions of dollars to put these really huge shelters on Guam, we're fooling our people. That's not going to happen. They didn't do it for New York during the Cold War. They're not going to do it here for Guam. What we need to be doing is making sure we're being honest with our people. So what do we do? What do? We do some of the things that we did when I was in Congress. We go after things that we can go after and make sure they're well-funded and adequate for our community. Things like missile defense that we got funded in our NDAA. And it wasn't just missile defense for our bases. They did a 360 missile defense coverage. They're going to cover the entire island, north, south. It doesn't matter where those missiles come from. That's going to protect us. And we did that within the context of what's good for the country and what's good for Guam. That's how we solve these problems.
Thank you, Candidate San Nicolas. We'll start with you for this next question. What measure will you support to combat poverty and improve the quality of life for all residents on the island?
Well, poverty is a symptom of what's been challenging our island for many decades. And we've been working so hard over these many decades to try and make sure that we reverse the things that have been affecting that. Whether we were in the legislature or whether we were in the Congress, the things that create a community struggling with poverty isn't a one-trick pony that you got to go out and solve in the Congress. It's a legacy of issues that you got to keep speaking up for and advocating for, whether it's education, whether it's health, whether it's public safety. When we underinvest in education, our people do not aren't as competitive as they need to be able to go out there and get the jobs or attract the jobs that we want to bring into our island. When we underinvest in healthcare, where we fail to be able to retain the workforce or the community that's going to have to take care of their older parents because they can't get the healthcare they're getting here. And when we underinvest in public safety, our people leave island because they don't feel safe anymore. And so to be able to address the poverty issue, we need to make sure that we're tackling the root causes of that. And that has to do with dealing with these legacy issues, being a voice for all of that, bringing in funding for that, and making sure that we're advocating for all that to get better.
Thank you. Candidate Cruz?
The fact that poverty is a huge issue on this island today means that nobody who has been in Congress in the last several years has been able to answer that question or do anything to combat it. It is a problem about thinking differently. We have to break the mold. We can't do the same thing that we've always been doing. We can't just submit requests and wait for the money to come out and then hope that it will be able to take care of the problem. In order to truly address poverty, we have to address the systemic policy issues that Washington, D.C. has put in place that prevent us from being able to truly become a thriving economy where we have enough excess revenues from a burgeoning economy that we are able to build housing for the homeless. We are able to provide support to people who need it. So we don't have immigration from people who we don't have the extra money to take care of, but we're doing it anyways. There are federal policies that are hobbling Guam, that are causing poverty. We need to rise above that and not just handle it like it's an everyday thing in Congress, but do something serious to change it.
Candidate Cruz, we'll start with you for this next question. How will you ensure transparency and accountability in your role as Guam's delegate to U.S. Congress?
So the folks that do know me know that I love to communicate. If anybody's been following me on Facebook, I'm sure some of you are like, okay, enough, stop with the transparency. When you go into Congress, you have to give the people constant information. You also have to be honest. You know, one of the things that really kind of torques me when I look at some of the stuff that comes out of the congressional offices is it's kind of like a press release factory for federal programs. You know, you've got federal agencies that are giving money to local Guam agencies whose staff worked really hard to put in their application, and then the office is just kind of like sending out, hey, we got this money or we got that money. You have to be transparent, and we have to set a vision together with the people. Sit down periodically so everybody knows where we are. Answer every call, be available to every constituent, and ensure full communication so that you never have to ask, are we being transparent or not? I want to hear people saying, too much transparency, we know exactly what you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate San Nicolas, same question to you, please.
We really pride ourselves in having broken the mold of transparency with regards to social media, with regards to putting things out there. All the press conferences that we had nonstop, even at midnight, with some of you folks in the media was just incredible for us, and it was a nonstop cycle. But I do agree, transparency. The key to that is also the honesty element. And you know, some of the things that we need to be honest about when we're being transparent is how we're talking about the issues. Like, for example, when we say that we should put Guam under the White House, there's a lot of things that aren't being very transparent there. Puerto Rico is under the White House. Puerto Rico does not get Section 30 money. You put Guam under the White House, we're going to lose $80 million in annual Section 30 funds because all of a sudden we're no longer going to be an insular territory governed by the Organic Act. You put Guam under the White House, and all of a sudden you take Guam out of having any kind of congressional oversight because there's no committee in Congress that has oversight over the White House. You wouldn't be able to call a hearing and bring in the White House officials because the White House is a separate branch of government. So we need to be very transparent about what it is that we're sharing with our people. It can't just sound good, it needs to be good.
Candidate San Nicolas, this last question for this round, we'll start with you. What is your response to calls for President Joe Biden to withdraw from the election and pass the torch to his VP?
I think that those calls are not unfounded, and anybody who says otherwise is towing a party line at the risk of losing credibility. I feel like that is an issue that really we could have seen coming. I have a colleague of mine, his name was Dean Phillips. He ran against Joe Biden in the primary. Dean Phillips was a millionaire out of Minnesota, a member of Congress, and he couldn't even get taken seriously while he was pursuing his challenge against President Biden. And when you step back and look at where we are now, and we talk about what should President Biden do now, we also need to step back and look at what just happened with Dean Phillips, because if a millionaire can't be competitive for a presidential race against a candidate that does have certain challenges, then we have a functional problem with our democracy. And we need to be talking about that, not just as an island, but as a Congress. And so I think that the Biden situation will resolve itself as the election nears, but I think we have bigger things to be talking about with respect to how easy it is for Americans to run for president and whether or not we're creating a process that actually works for the country.
Thank you. Candidate Cruz?
Sure. Let me start out with my 60 seconds by first telling you that everything he said about the White House is not true. I have actually been working with lawyers in Washington, D.C., who are firms that are working with the Congress. And it actually makes total sense for us to be able to elevate Guam's issues to the White House. Because I'll tell you what, sitting under the Department of Interior, we are not getting what we deserve and what we need. And it will not touch the Section 30 funds. As a matter of fact, we're going to be able to get more funds because we are going to be at the center of attention at a time when the national security strategy has Guam in the center of America's strategy in the Pacific. And as far as the Biden issue, I will tell you, it is disappointing that the party had to get to this. I think the party should have spent more time developing better candidates and better solutions for everyone. And I think that the party will have to decide how it wants to go in the coming election.
Candidate Cruz, Candidate San Nicolas, thank you both for your responses. We'll be right back with the candidates' closing statements when we return.
Hafa de Guam. I am so proud to endorse my good friend Jim Moylan to continue serving you, the people of Guam, as a member of the House of Representatives. In just his first term, Jim has built many great relationships here in Congress, which benefit the island of Guam. As a member of the Armed Services Committee, he has fought to defend the island and the Indo-PACOM region while securing many victories to help Guam's economy. This is just the start. Let's return Jim to the halls of Congress this November. Viva Guam!
What I see in someone like Sabrina is that this is someone who knows what those issues are, and over all these years of seeing Guam through some of the highs and some of the lows, I believe this is, though it's new blood coming in, which we need, it's someone with that knowledge that is so necessary to work for the people of Guam. So please, support and vote for Sabrina Salas Montanani.
I'm Sabrina Salas Matanani, and I approve this message.
When my career in 1999 took me off of Guam, I wanted to go and learn more. I wanted to gain more experience. I was able to operate at the highest levels of Washington, D.C. I was a Deputy Assistant Secretary at Housing and Urban Development. I was the Deputy Inspector General for Iraq Reconstruction, reporting to a Secretary of Defense, a Secretary of State, and 8 committees of Congress, both the Senate and the House side. Guam is how I got there. I was able to succeed because of everything that I learned. But I was always going to come home to bring that experience, to bring that back to Guam so that I could do something that made a difference. I'm Ginger Cruz, candidate for Congress, and I approve this ad.
For the United States.
I'm Tony Atta, and I approve this message. Tony Atta produced quality legislation as a senator. Laws that prioritize our needs and keep our people safe. His Castle Doctrine legislation is the strongest law of the land, which allows us to protect our loved ones at home. But Tony's been serving our community long before he became a senator. So when people say, I'm glad Tony's back in politics, we say, no, Tony never left leadership. Vote Tony Atta for senator. It's time to bring back the quality.
You're watching the 2024 Congressional Candidate Forum, coming to you from the Crown Plaza Resort in Tumon. Also brought to you live thanks to our partners over at Docomo Pacific. So candidates, thank you for taking the questions from both our community organizations and the KUAM News team. Now we'll start with your 2 minutes for your closing statements. We'll start with Candidate Cruz.
Thank you very much, Nick. So, to the people of Guam, we're facing a defining moment in Guam's history. The threats have never been more serious. I see them on a daily basis. I read about them, I get information about it, and it really is concerning. And at the same time, the opportunities have never been greater. But we have not taken advantage of those opportunities, and we've not prepared for those threats properly. And that's because we're doing the same routine that we've always done in Washington, D.C. We're kind of managing it like it's just the inbox, and we need to do all the things that we're supposed to do, but we're not looking at the bigger picture. We need to aim higher, we need to do more, because you know what? If it was done by anybody in the last 6 years, we wouldn't have the suffering that we're having on our island right now. We would not have the people going through the challenges that we are. Anybody sitting in this audience, you tell me if you know somebody who has left or is thinking of leaving, somebody who's struggling because of a healthcare problem, somebody who has a problem because the infrastructure just isn't there, the hospital isn't working, the schools aren't functioning, and all of that has a tracer back to a federal policy that is holding us back. We need to do more. We have to break out of the mold and try something bold. And when I try to break out and do something bold, people are going to say, you can't do that. And you know what I'm going to say? We absolutely can, because I have a plan, I have a vision. I know that we can collaborate with the private sector, with the public sector on Guam. I know that there are people in Washington that we can enlist to help us put our experts with them and come up with those solutions. I have 40 years of experience. You can look at it all. It's online. You can watch me testify on the Hill. You can watch and read what I've written. And I am saying to you that I love this island. I am a fighter. I have very different ideas for what we can do to break out of the mold. And if you want change in D.C., If you want somebody to be that agent of change, then I ask you for the opportunity. Give me a chance, give me your vote, and I promise I won't let you down.
Thank you, Candidate Cruz. Candidate San Nicolas, your closing.
Thank you so much, Nick, and thank you all to the members of the audience and to the listening audience at home and the organizers for putting this together. I want to thank Ginger and ask another round of applause for Ginger Cruz, please. She's here. Ginger's here. I really wish that the other two candidates would have been here as well. This kind of engagement and being able to get us to answer these questions, it isn't just about contrasting each other, but it's about also making sure that our blades are still sharp. And so I wanted to thank all of you as well for your questions, and Nick, you guys for your questions, because it just helps me to make sure that the reasons why we're doing this and the solutions that we're talking about and what we want to bring to the table, are as fine-tuned as they possibly can be if the people will give us a chance to serve you in the Congress again. And, we would really love to have that opportunity to do that. When I first ran for Congress, we didn't have these. We did not have these forums back in 2018 when I was running against Madeline Burdali. We didn't have a single one. And there weren't any for many years before that. And there was a reason for that. It was because while the Congress position can, pursue some big picture issues like the military buildup, there was a lot of doubt as to whether or not the congressional office could actually be an agent of change. Before I ran for this office, there was a doubt about whether or not the congressional office could actually be the bully pulpit to be able to stand up and speak for the people when there's silence everywhere. Before we ran for this office, the people of Guam, they voted for their member of Congress, but they didn't have these kind of engagements. We have them now. We have them because we've proven that this office is able to do so many great things for our island and our people. We did so many things for Guam that we have listed in our platform that we share with the community, and I'd like to share it with you today. From the war claims to getting Medicaid fixed, to getting COFA Medicaid for our migrants, who, by the way, I think that we should welcome our migrants. We shouldn't blame them for what's going on here on Guam. We should find ways to incorporate them and find ways to help them be a part of the solution, because that's what Guam is. That is who we are. Okay, so let's not divide, let's unite, and let's bring those people to the table and make them be a part of the solution here on Guam. But we've done so many more things besides that. Agent Orange for our veterans, things people said that we couldn't get done. EITC. So let's do these things for Guam. I want to keep doing them for you as a congressman. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Round of applause, please, for our candidates, Ginger Cruz and Mike San Nicolas. Thank you, candidates, so much for joining us tonight. And remember, early voting is now open, so get to it. Last day to register as well, July 18th. August 3rd is primary race day. Keep it locked to KUAM also for more coverage this election season, because after the primary, we just may do this again. So stay tuned for those dates. We'll see you this Wednesday for our interview with the Hub for your senatorial candidates. And don't forget to check out The Magic of Anthony Reid. Book your tickets for the Magic Show here in the Encore Theater. I'm Nick Delgado. Stay safe, and we'll see you soon.